Welcome to the Scott Holland podcast, where tonight I don't know if you, as a Cougar fan, because odds are your Cougar fan listeners are aware, but not the happiest time to be a Houston Cougar fan. Not exclusively bad news this week. We have a volleyball program that is usually a font of optimism and had, I would say, an especially good past week or so. But Houston Cougar football did not have an especially good last week or so. Something that was supposed to be, I think, a fairly joyous occasion for all of us. The debut of this program against a Big 12 opponent did not go very hot. And I think we have, unfortunately, no choice but to come on here and talk about it tonight because the Cougars had a rather lackluster showing against the TCU Horned Frogs last Saturday in front of a national TV audience that I unfortunately have no choice but to talk about here. And, it's good or bad. That's why we have to be here. We're not here just for the good times. We're here for the not so good times. We're here for what we have right now. So not letting Bobby exclusively have the shine of being someone podcasting from parts unknown, I'm calling it. I did not get a better, for all people watching on video, because there are a few of you, but you're growing in number, a little treat for you. Did not get a better designer. I am calling in from the beautiful Research Triangle of North Carolina to talk about a not so beautiful football game. Dustin, because you're the one of us who has not gotten a chance to talk in front of a microphone about this game, whether it's Bobby's wonderful premium episode, which I'll get to plugging here in a bit, and myself talking, I think, in broad strokes about what a bad football game that was on Saturday night. So I think I know the answer. I think I can probably guess, but how are you faring outside of your experience as a Houston Cougar football fan, Dustin?
Oh, and everything that has nothing to do with Houston Cougar football right now. Life is fantastic. So I mean, overall, you keep things in perspective and you try not to let it affect your mood too much. But yeah, I was trying not to have two consecutive podcasts where I was going to come in here and say curse words about the football team, but I'm pretty sure I'm about to have two consecutive podcasts. I'm about to come in here and say some curse words about the football team. So it would have been one thing to lose the game. I think we all know we were going to lose the game. Would have been reasonably okay with the Cougars losing that game and playing at least kind of well, but not so much. So that'll be something to talk about at the very least.
Bobby, you were, I guess, lucky enough not to have watched that specific football performance in person like Dustin and myself. So how you doing, friend?
Good. It was my day off today, so I got to go play some golf and got to go out there. It wasn't 110 degrees for one of the first times since it warmed up. So uh fun, good day, hit the ball well. So tough to be in a bad mood when you get to play a little bit of golf earlier if you're a golfer. So ready to sadly discuss this Cougar football team.
You say you can't be in a bad mood, but buddy, this is gonna challenge your
Yeah.
ability
Oh,
to
I'm
be in a
about to
bad
be.
mood the
I'm
next
about to be.
the
I'm
next
about to be.
35 to 40 minutes, just about. But I want to, at the top, of course, plug our wonderful patreon.com/shpawdcast, where Bobby dropped our third of three games so far. Excellent instant recap of the game. Full disclosure, Bobby texted me right afterwards. He's like, I don't know if I went like over the line. And I was planning on being on this podcast with you, Bobby, but I had a tight window in which to eat dinner and have some drinks with my dad after we both watched that not so great football game in person. So you hopped on, did a very good job. So I think summing up what happened, and I think honestly being more circumspect in that moment than I think myself and most Cougar fans could be. So check that out, patreon.com/shpawdcast, not just getting those awesome premium shows, but just supporting our independent weekly Cougar podcast. So you know, do that 16 cents a day, patreon.com/shpwdcast. And of course, at the top here, I got to mention our good friends, Charlie Hustle, charliehustle.com. Vintage Made Fresh is our friends there like to say. And I'm going to let you all in on a little secret. I like to promote our sponsor here, but I'm going to have this be a treat for those of y'all listening. Charlie Hustle refreshed a lot in terms of, their sizes and stuff of the original collection. So if they didn't have a shirt or a crew neck in your size, it's been restocked now. This is fan service. I'm doing this for you, the listeners. You want to get an awesome Cougar t-shirt, an awesome Cougar crew neck, charliehustle.com. Use our promo code SHP15. That's going to save you 15% off any order you make with Charlie Hustle, saving on just an incredible collection, incredibly high quality of Cougar gear there. Vintage incredibly comfortable stuff. So charliehustle.com. You're not just going to look good and feel good wearing this stuff. You're going to be supporting our show in the process. I know last week did one of those real heavy sighs before doing the recap of this game, but I'm not gonna beg out of doing it. I'm not gonna be like, guys, we really have to. It's my lot in life to talk about the shitty fucking football team. So let's get in it. Let's talk about the 36-13 loss by your Houston Cougars to the TCU Horned Frogs on Saturday. A game that I don't want to just rub salt in all of our respective wounds here. Guys, if we have a successful run after this, it's not going to be overshadowed by this game being bad. The same way that the 2014 season opener didn't overshadow the Oklahoma game in 2016 or the 2015 conference championship and Peach Bowl. It's bad loss, but you can improve on these things. But it's going to always sting a little bit that this will always be our first Big 12 game. It'll sting less if we have a more successful next 5 or 6 years than maybe we probably expect right now watching this team, but it's going to sting at least a little bit that this was always going to be our first Big 12 game. And like Dustin said, I think it's not the fact that we lost this game, it's how we lost this game. So let's get to talking about how we lost this game. Why don't we? I think a pretty discouraging start, although I think the first TCU possession wasn't necessarily indicative of how the rest of the first half would go. The Horned Frogs did not win the coin toss. The Cougars, as you'd expect, deferred. TCU got the first possession and really went very, very quickly down the field against the Cougars. Just over a minute and a half of action. TCU offense moves it very quickly, culminating in a 33-yard pass from Chandler Morris to Warren Thompson for the touchdown. Cougars are down 7-0, one possession. And it's looking pretty bad. It would get pretty bad, but not indicative, I think, of how competitive the first half was, at least. Cougars get the ball back. Don't really do much offensively, except for a 53-yard pass from Donovan Smith to Samuel Brown, who I think showed the deep threat potential that he is, I think, consistently shown these first 3 games. Unfortunately, that would be the last time Samuel Brown would show that deep threat potential. The Cougs would, because of that 53-yard pass, get fairly deep in TCU territory, but couldn't do much more with it. Jack Martin, 44-yard field goal at 7-3 after 2 possessions. TCU gets the ball back, but 2 plays in to this drive, Chandler Morris on a sack is stripped by Cougar interior lineman Jamari Caldwell. Cougars recover it in TCU territory, feeling pretty good. Cougars have a chance to take the lead, or at the very least keep this one close and at a field goal. Unfortunately, I think give this team some credit. A really terrible spot on a Donovan Smith 3rd and short run, set up a 4th and short, which was just an excusably bad play call. Brandon Campbell run very much short of the sticks. Cougars, for seemingly the umpteenth time this year, failed to capitalize on a turnover deep in opponent territory. TCU gets the ball back, not able to do anything with it. Thankfully, the Cougars, though, unfortunately, Cougars get the ball back, get into TCU territory. Some help from a TCU pass interference. 4th and 2 from the TCU 31. For some reason, they decided to trot Jack Martin out there for an almost 50-yard field goal. He misses it, had the leg, but I think just hooked it a little bit. Still 7-3 TCU over the Cougars. Next possession, Horned Frogs look like they're about to take a 2-possession lead. However, Cougars get a nice Malik Fleming interception on 4th and short, deep in Cougar territory. Gets returned into TCU territory, but stop me if this sounds familiar. Cougars cannot do anything with that possession deep in TCU territory. We ultimately get to 4th and 1 at the TCU 5-yard line. Incomplete pass. TCU gets the ball back at their own 5, still 7-3. Cougars, TCU eventually gets the ball back, marches into Cougar territory, extends it to 10-3, but once again, the defense gives you kind of a bend but don't break, still a 1-possession game. You're not feeling amazing about it, but you're not feeling bad about being 1 touchdown down to the Frogs. At that point, Cougars, unfortunately, get the ball back. Donovan Smith, I believe this was the flea flicker interception, right? In the second quarter, just staggeringly bad play call. Cougars ask a guy who struggles with quick decisions to make a quick decision. He makes the wrong one, throws it right back to the Horned Frogs. Horned Frogs get a field goal. However, this is when Matthew Golden returns, just an absolutely electric, the one electric play of this game for the Cougars. I guess the subsequent Parker Jenkins return might qualify, but Matthew Golden takes to the house. 13-10 Cougars at this point. Are starting to feel pretty good. TC gets the ball back. Eventually does stall out in Cougar. Oh no, excuse me. That's the one where what's his name? Imani Bailey runs in for a touchdown. It's 20-10 Horned Frogs. At this point, Cougars do get one more field goal from Jack Martin. I would say, and that was the drive where Parker Jenkins gets it to about midfield. Probably your best offensive possession, and I'm talking about an offensive possession where you went less than 30 yards. So 20-13 at that point. Cougars do eventually get TC off the field. They attempt a 60-yard field goal at the half. At that point, it's 20-13. In spite of TCU moving the ball fairly well at times, in spite of the offense really showing you basically nothing other than a couple of decent pass plays in the first half, you say, hey, we're down a touchdown. We're getting the ball at halftime. Hasn't gone perfect in the first half, but you're feeling pretty decent about it. And I think the third quarter quickly disabused you of any feelings of being decent from the Cougars. I mean, I think no play typifies how futile this game was for the Cougars than how that first possession starts. I mean, a couple different things. You have Matthew Golden, who, again, definitely a net positive for you in the return game on Saturday night, but you could tell him and Jenkins were both kind of feeling themselves in the return game and just had a number of second half returns, not even get close to the touchback line of the 25. So that drive starts at the 15. You get Donovan Smith just an unconscionable intentional grounding that puts you way, way, way back up to your own end zone. Basically have to punt it to Lane Wilkins back to TCU. And thank God Lane Wilkins is just an absolutely unbelievable punter, because guys, this would have been just even more catastrophically bad if Lane Wilkins just absolutely wasn't kicking the heck out of the pill on Saturday night. But TCU eventually gets the ball back, gets a touchdown, in spite of the fact that it had this really good kicker, misses a PAT, just one of the worst shanks you'll ever see. But that was about it for TCU. Lights. TCU's up 26-13 at that point, but it stays 26-13 for a pretty good chunk of the third quarter. Problem is Cougars just continue to do absolutely nothing offensively, and you kind of slowly see it. TCU adds on another field goal. We're up to 29-13 at this point. Really, watching the stadium, it was kind of a when's the dam gonna break, because I wouldn't say, and we're gonna get to this, I wouldn't say it was an excellent Cougar defensive performance, but it was a Cougar defensive performance that kept you in this game maybe a bit longer than you deserve to be. And then I think finally in the fourth quarter, you saw that just completely come undone. TCU did have an empty possession to start the fourth quarter and miss a field goal, but I think finally you saw really the proverbial bat get broken. TCU gets the ball with 6 minutes left and concludes with a Trey Sanders 18-yard run up the middle where he had a lane. I would say the lane the size of a classic Volvo to run through. You could finally see the Cougar defense just run out of steam. 36-13, insult to injury. Donovan Smith throws just I think earlier, I actually skipped over Donovan Smith throwing the ball away on 4th and long to end one of the Cougar possessions. Then I think insult to injury, final Cougar possession. And again, this is 4th down, so not really a consequential one, but throws just an unbelievably bad pick. 36-13, TCU wins, 0 Cougar offensive touchdowns, and I think 0 positive feelings from the fan base. Coming out of this one, Dustin, where on earth do you want to start with this one?
I mean, I think you have to start with Houston scoring 0 offensive touchdowns. That was a long recap in which you described zero offensive touchdowns against a TCU team that got TCU defense that got torched by the only other FBS team they've played this year. And it's, and it would be one thing if it was out of character or if it was surprising or if that wasn't totally in line with how the first 2 games went in terms of Houston's offense. But this is after subpar offensive performances against UTSA and Rice. You're a quarter of the way through your season now, and we've seen nothing but just bad offensive football from Houston. And I know Dana keeps talking about, oh, well, it's early, we got to figure things out. The season's a quarter of the way over. You only get 12 games. You've already played 3 of them, and you've not looked like anything but garbage offensively. Through 3 games, Houston 6 offensive touchdowns. Half of the touchdowns we've scored this year came in the fourth quarter against Rice, including 2 of the only 3 touchdowns. We've scored 3 touchdowns all year that on drives that started on our own side of the field. 2 of the 3 were in the fourth quarter against Rice.
God,
the other 11 quarters, 1. That's abysmal. And if you're thinking, okay, well, we've played like the toughest tests on our schedule defense wise, it's literally the opposite. According to SP Plus, 5 of the 9 teams remaining on our schedule are better defensively than every team we've played so far. 9 out of 9 teams on the schedule are better than Rice and UTSA, 2 teams that gave us all kinds of trouble, trying to move the ball and score the ball with any regularity. It's a Cougar offense that isn't good at making big plays. They can't run the ball worth a damn. They have nothing for, just watching this game, I said out loud, like early on, and it just continued happening. I was like, I figured we had second and short or third and short. I was like, oh no, any down and short, our mortal enemy, because we can't run the ball and we just don't have anything that the coaches, Holgers and nobody else has anything that they know how to scheme up that works, that gets a short. Every time we get a first down on short yardage, it's like a miracle. It's baffling. We can get into more of some of the post game comments that Dana had afterwards, and I sure will. But I mean, in terms of what we saw on the field on Saturday night, it was abysmal, and it's been that way pretty much the entire year, and it's scary thinking the way that some of the defenses that we're going to still face this year, in all likelihood, are just going to sit on us.
Yeah, absolutely. Like for me, the offense is just a laughing stock. Like it's just embarrassing to watch this and cheer for this offense at this point. Like it's so bad. And, I said on the premium post game react on Patreon, Dana has said in the past that he's changed his offense because he, didn't want to wear out his defense or anything like that, right? That hurry up, got the defense on the field quicker if you didn't score right away. But here's the thing, guys. We are still literally going 3 and out. A minute and a half and a minute and a half of game time are the exact same whether you score a touchdown or not. Like 3 plays is 3 plays, guys. Like it's awful. And then the other part that kills me is like he could add in any of the 07 or the 08 offense, any of that air raid style offense, and then you don't have to run hurry up with it. Like you can just take the clock down to 4 seconds before you snap the ball and you give your defense a break. Like what is happening where he is just like, yeah, I have to run the ball 50% of the time. And if you're going to do that, okay, fine. You have to run the ball effectively. We had, 55 total yards. And if you listen to the premium pod we had 55 yards on 27 rushes. 2 of those rushes accounted for 35 of the yards. So we had 25 rushes for 20 yards. Do you know how hard it is to not do that? Like, the joke that you see on like social
like 1 yard of carry, it's a 1 yard of carry.
Yeah, yeah. Could you as like a person pick up a yard in the NFL? And I always say no, I couldn't, right? Like, of course I couldn't. I'm not gonna find the hole and hit it. We couldn't do that. And they're like, we were trying to. Like, they didn't do it for $1 million. They just couldn't do it. Like last year at the SMU game, as much as we don't want to talk about bad Cougar performances, they're running off the field after we gave up a touchdown on every single drive. And I said, me and 10 of my friends, I could get Sam, I could get Dustin, and I could get 8 of our friends. We could have had that same performance. Guys, I think legitimately that if you put any of us back behind the line, we could average under a yard a carry. I think I could get under a yard a carry. I'm not saying that I'd run for 50, but like, I think legitimately I could run for 20 on 25 attempts. And I'm not a Division I athlete.
I mean, I do like one run. Then like Johnny Hodges would hit me once, and I'd be like in a body cast for the next like 3 weeks. But I think your point is valid. It's more just like, okay,
it's insane.
I can do a catastrophically bad job too, and I'm not getting a full scholarship.
Like, and like, I always remember this line that was said to me by, I believe, the father of Cougar softball great Melissa Gregson. I believe it was her dad one time. We were at a softball game, and it was like, I think the final score was 1-0 or something like that. And he said, it doesn't matter how well you pitch. If you score 0, you're not going to win a game. He goes, it doesn't matter if you give up 1. It doesn't matter if you give up 20. He goes, if you don't score any, you're not going to win a game. And guys, our offense didn't score a point. They got 3 on a field goal, and then we had to depend on 0 touchdowns. It's baffling how this offensive savant that we have to hear about and I said it last week and I'll say it this week, if I have to hear that he's an air raid coach again, and I hear a commentator talk about how he's got all this high flying offense, and then I watch us run for 55 yards on 27 attempts, I'm going to throw something through my TV.
We can't fully answer this question until the season's done. As bad as this offense is, like, you can't say through 3 games, okay, this is definitively the worst offense I've seen. But I will say through 3 games, I have not seen, since we've been following this program, 2006, 2007, a definitively worse Cougar offense. I've seen some bad ones. 2012 offense, bad. 2014 offense, bad. Dana's first offense here, bad, but I think for reasons that, I don't think Dana should bear full responsibility for. But I can look at all those offense and say, okay, well, they had a good game here. That they did one thing for, like, the 2012 offense, bad. But they could still throw for a good number of yards against the bad defenses on their schedule. They still had some ability in the pass game. You'd still see Charles Sims in his last year at UH every now and then do something positive. What does this offense do? Occasionally, Samuel Brown gets a big non-touchdown reception. Occasionally, Donovan Smith, maybe once or twice a game, will have a nice run. That's fucking it. I mean, this is a coach, like, we didn't hire, Dana Holgerson didn't get hired for his ability to talk in front of the boosters. He didn't get hired because of his culture, but he didn't get hired because of his recruiting. He got hired for his offensive acumen. And you, Bobby, you, Dustin, me, and every Cougar fan listening has just had to watch just this fucking travesty of an offensive first 3 games. It could get better. That's why I can say you cannot definitively say right now. You need to see a full season or most of its body of work to truly say that. But, and again, I know a lot of new faces. I know this offense wasn't going to look exactly like it did with Clayton Tune, a 5th-year guy in the program, Tank Dell, a 5th-year guy in the program, number of other key guys. I know that. I think I have my expectations in a nice, realistic place. I'm not expecting us to average 40 points a game. Didn't expect us to beat TCU. And I think TCU is going to be one of the better Big 12 teams we see this year, but that is absolutely not one of the best defenses we'll see. That's a good offensive team. And that's why maybe I'm a little bit more forgiving of the kind of C- D+ defensive performance we got, because TCU is genuinely good offense. I thought, pains me to say it, Kendall Briles, I think, called a good game. He did not get cute very often. He ran stuff that worked. And I think that's just the most anecdotal difference. Like, you watch, and it's not just this TCU offense, this U of H offense. You watch U of H play most of the opposing offense, and you say, that looks easy for them. And it's not just because our defense has been kind of hit or miss the last couple of years. It looks like the offense is designed for what the players are good at doing. It doesn't look like that. It looks like we have some weird idea of what Donovan Smith is that has no resemblance to what Donovan Smith is as a quarterback. And that's kind of my first point, is that just whatever this offense is trying to be, I don't know. I don't think anyone here has any good idea of what this offense succeeding is supposed to look like. It is clear Donovan Smith is a terrible fit for what Dana Holgerson is trying to do, which makes it even more painful when Dana Holgerson goes in front of the media and is like, no, the design's fine. The design could not be worse from my layman's perspective. The things Donovan Smith is being asked to in this offense, other than the occasional run, and that's what really blew my mind also from Saturday. What Donovan Smith in the run game was doing was almost entirely, the few times he did it was just a play breaking down and him trying to make something happen with his feet. I didn't see, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think I saw a single designed run for Donovan Smith on Saturday night. And given, or I guess I was going to say that the short yardage situations are unsuccessful. I guess given how good he is as a runner, like, there's an offense out there, I think Donovan Smith is a flawed quarterback, but I think there's an offense out there that fits that guy. If this staff, and Donovan Smith's either been committed to or part of this program since the beginning of the winter semester. This isn't like, oh, we came in during the summer and we're trying to fit him into something we designed during spring and we're not sure it works and doesn't. Donovan Smith's been in that building since the spring semester started in January. And this is the offense you're running out there? Like, this is what you thought would work best with Donovan Smith. I think if this coach was willing to, at this point in his career, be creative and see what works for his quarterback, I'm not going to say it's one of our best offenses, but I think he could run something out there that would functionally work with Donovan Smith. I think there's some fatal flaws there, like the offensive line. And I think, your receivers really not playing up to their ability here these first few weeks. But I think there's an offense out there that could work with Donovan Smith. It is definitely not the offense that we have seen for the first 3 games. It has been so bad, not to belabor the point.
Yeah, I think I'm sorry, Dustin, go ahead, bud.
I was just gonna say, I think part of what makes it so frustrating too is that like we see the defense is like it's not been great, but it's certainly improved. Like I think it's as improved as we could have like reasonably expected based on last year. Like the special teams by and large have been really good.
Yeah.
Like on a halfway decent team, we'd be coming back here every week talking about how excited we were with the special teams and like all the plays that we've been seeing in special teams. Like if this offense was like it again, like you said, Sam, it doesn't have to be like Clayton Tune, Tank Dell good. It just has to be like respectable. If this offense is respectable, this is a pretty decent U of H team. I don't think there's any heat on Dana Holgerson's seat. And I think we at least don't embarrass ourselves against TCU. We probably lose by a touchdown or two when we come back here and go, yeah, it's going to happen. You're playing TCU. They're a good team. Stuff happens. But like, the offense just, it's not, we need this to be like a C offense, and it's an F- offense thus far. That's what's I think so frustrating about it.
Yeah, and to Sam's point about needing to figure out an offense that works for this quarterback in this a system that works, it's been done before. Donovan Smith looks like, obviously he's not Cam Newton, right? Like he's just not. But that offense that Auburn team ran, where he can do some RPOs, things like that, and get the ball out quick, have a couple of reads, 1, maybe 2 reads. If it's there, throw it. If it's not, tuck it and run. I think that style of an offense would work with Donovan Smith. Donovan Smith, as we said earlier, with the flea flicker play, right? If he's got to think too quick and he's got, or he gets under a little bit of pressure and can't think just a little bit, it gets him into some trouble. So if you just give him 2 options, here's your 2 options, go. Just go. If your first 2 options are open, if one of those 2 are open, get it to him. If not, run it. I think we would all be happy with that offense. It may not score, 30-35 to win you a game, but it at least shows that we know what we're doing at least a little bit. But everybody on this offense just looks so confused. And a lot of programs, when you think about them, you think about what does this program do, right? Are they identity? Like you said earlier, Sam, is it what's your identity? Are you a run team? Are you a pass team? Are you a defense first team where we're going to lock you down to 17? And and all we need is 21, right? We're going to let you score 10. We're going to score 14. Like, what's the identity of this team? And what's been the identity of this team since Dana Holgerson came in? Can anyone tell me?
The identity was one season we had like 3 NFL guys on defense.
Yeah. Other than that, there's been nothing. There's no, like, at least with those teams under Sumlin, right? You knew what Sumlin, you knew what Sumlin's teams were going to do. They're going to put up 60 and we're going to try and hold you, right? The Herman teams, they at least, he had a culture kind of built here where it was like, we're going to try our best. We're going to be the annoying little brother to everybody. We're going to be pesky. We're going to be in your face. We're going to try, like, he built a culture. Now, did he leave on the best circumstances? No, he's an asshole, right? But at the end of the day, he built a culture here. And any coach who's won here has had some kind of culture or had some kind of identity with the ball. And we just don't have that with Holgerson.
I think even the Clayton Tune years, I was going to say, even the Clayton Tune years, even when the offense succeeded sometimes, it still felt like we weren't making things easy on Clayton Tune. And Clayton Tune's a Sunday quarterback, which I don't think Donovan Smith is. And that's, I think that's such a scary thing, is that, wow, we couldn't design an easy offense for a guy who's a really skilled passer, guy who an NFL team decided to draft, which I think puts him in an upper echelon of quarterbacks. Donovan Smith's not that guy. Donovan Smith does some stuff well, and I don't think the staff seems to have noticed. They're not making it easy on him. And this is not me calling Donovan Smith stupid or anything like that, but give the guy a chance to succeed. That's all I'm saying. I think we're seeing precious little of that from the offense, and I think that it's kind of manifested itself in the 0 offensive touchdowns against a TCU team that, again, I think this is a good TCU team. I'm not belittling this opponent. I don't think they're that good of a defensive team. I don't think this is a TCU team that's going to hold any other Big 12 team this season, unless Iowa State's in the schedule. No offense, Dustin. I don't think they're going to have any more holding an opponent to. No, but I mean, I don't think they're going to hold any opponent to 0 offensive touchdowns the rest of this year.
Hey, let's throw Oklahoma State on that list.
Yeah, teams Oklahoma State too, as well. Maybe Baylor on a bad day.
Dustin feels better now. Look at his face. Like, all right, hold on.
Not gonna besmirch your clones anymore than I have. But you know what I'm saying, guys? Like, it doesn't seem like they understand what this quarterback does well. And if that's the case, what have you been doing the last 8 months?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think what you guys are talking about, the lack of identity, the lack of ability to tailor an offense to Donovan Smith. That's what makes it so frustrating, seeing the quotes from Dana Holgorsen after the game. Oh, it's not the play calls. It's just not. Oh, I thought we had a good game plan coming in. We're not executing. Like, it's the second year in a row of very early on in the season making public statements to the effect of like, hey, I'm doing my job as a coach. It's the players that are fucking up. Right. Which is
like, they're not his guys.
Right. It's such a weird hill to die on, because no one believes you. Like, is there a single Cougar fan that's like, oh, you know what? Dana's right. Dana's doing his job. It's just the players.
It's a very small number. It's a very small number if they exist. Yeah.
Like you said, Bobby, it's irrelevant. Yeah. And even if you're right, it's irrelevant, because if Dana Holgorsen genuinely coached up this team for that game at a Big 12 level, genuinely did like I'm a good Big 12 coach level of like putting an offense together that fits the team that he has on hand, then you have the worst fucking players in the Big 12, which is also your responsibility, because again, you just scored 0 offensive touchdowns and against a defense that looked like Swiss cheese against their only other FBS opponent. That makes you the worst evaluator and or recruiter of talent in at least the conference, if not the country, if you did a great job coaching the team up and that's what happened. And it's just like, it's also something that just feels like it can't be great to hear if you're an offensive player for Houston. Scoring points is a team project between all the offensive coaches and all the offensive players. Your grade for the team project is an F, because, again, 0 touchdowns. So if you're taking part in a group project and the leader of that group throws his hands up at the end after you all get an F and is like, well, the part that I was responsible for was totally fine. Like, how does that make you feel? Does that make you excited to go be led by that person more in the future? You know what I mean? Like, I know last week we talked about don't tarmac Dana Holgorsen, let him finish out the year or whatever. And I'll admit, even after like rereading Ryan Monso's article on Dana's buyout over at GoCougs.com, I'm still not sure exactly the ins and outs of how much the buyout goes down if you fire him now versus after December 1 or whatever it is. But I'm there. I want him gone yesterday. What else do you need to see at this point? It's not just the results, although it is the results. It's the complete it's the complete failure of leadership. Like, I don't know any other way to describe the like, it's not me, it's the players move that Dana repeatedly now keeps trying to play. Once as an exception, twice as a trend. Did it last year, did it this year. He'll keep doing it to dodge any questions that anyone brings up about his alleged offensive expertise until U of H shows him the door, plain and simple. You don't see good coaches and strong leaders say, well, I did my part after the entire team effort is garbage. And that is maybe to me even more odious than the way that the team played offensively on Saturday.
And again, if the players aren't doing it, they're your guys. It's year 5, bro. It's your guys. It's not like you're dealing with Applewhite players anymore. It's not like you're dealing with, because you remember he came in and we had the whole red shirt controversy, and it was like, what are we gonna do? Like, oh, he did a terrible job of using red shirts effectively, so we have no depth on this team, and I need to rebuild this. It's yours now. It's yours. His guys are pretty much gone. I think we have a couple of COVID guys. But like, it's your team.
I think it's just
now.
Jack Freeman at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. It's Dana Holgorsen's team. And if the players aren't doing it, that's on you. You can no longer blame anyone else. It's like the classic scenario, like you said, of leadership. I didn't know. Well, if you didn't know, you should have known. And if you did know, you shouldn't have allowed it to happen. These are your guys. If they're bad, it's because of you. If they're not executing, it's because of you. If it's not your preparation, it's that you recruited bad players. They're his guys. So why are you throwing them under the bus?
Just a couple more stats, guys. Not fun, happy stats offensively, as you could imagine. I feel like 2 of 10 on fourth down, that's the coach. Whether that's the decision to go for it, whether it's a play call there. If it's fourth and short, and that was another thing I think, Dustin, he specifically mentioned, oh yeah, we're not doing good on fourth down, but it's not the play calls. It's like, bro, how either it's the execution, which falls on you and your staff as coaches, or it's the play calls, which definitely falls on you and your staff's coaches, or it's the recruiting. Like, you haven't recruited players good enough to execute in your system, which absolutely is on you, the coaches. So it's a weird, I guess, needle he's trying to thread here. Like, I don't know. And like you said, I don't believe any meaningful number of Cougar fans actually buy this. I don't believe any meaningful number of Cougar fans hear him saying that. They're like, you're right, Dana. You recruited this team. You bizarrely decided not to hire an offensive coordinator in Shannon Dawson, who, by the way, only 3 games in, so I'm not ready to crown Shannon Dawson a guy who has a mostly subpar career as an offensive coordinator. But
Shannon Dawson, crown his ass. Crown his ass.
Yes,
sorry.
Thank you, Denny. Thank you, Denny Green, for jumping in there. But no, I mean, I think it's fair to say, even through 3 games, like, the problem wasn't Shannon Dawson. And it's kind of what we thought might be a possibility. Like, okay, Shannon Dawson's had this kind of sketchy career track record, but like, maybe the problem is Dana. Like, we didn't know for sure. Maybe the problem is Dana. I think, fellas, there's no more maybe about what the root problem was for this team, not knowing what they were last year, and certainly having no idea of what this is going to be this year. It's so insane that after all this, that he's publicly saying that the offensive design is fine. Like, what evidence of that is there? What, with your eyes, could you see at TDC Stadium on Saturday night where I was like, oh yeah, there's guys, like, there were so many times, this is kind of a Cougar defensive problem too, but there were so many times where even when Chandler Morris missed them, TCU was getting guys open. Like, how many times have you guys seen, other than probably a handful of Samuel Brown times, and I think Golden's touchdown catches, it's been so few times where we've seen a Cougar receiver actually get designed open. I know I keep coming back to this, but, and again, part of this is the problem with our defense too, but like, offense looks so easy for everyone but us. Like, it looks like our offense are playing with those like weight belts that you like use for resistance out there. It looks like we're playing in quicksand out there.
Like one of those parachutes.
Yeah, exactly. Just like the pace we run it at, like guys just not being able to get open. You just see, I think, so many obvious failings of design here. And again, I know I said this already, but that's an absolutely insane thing when the reason why you're paying way above market for this coach is supposed offensive expertise. And we're clearly not getting any of it. And we've gotten very little of it now in year 5 of Dana Holgorsen here. And that's why I think I'm with you, Dustin. I was very much on the, okay, well, let's let the season play out. And I'm at mental peace with the fact that I don't think there's going to be a scenario, barring some off-field stuff, which I'm not saying is going to happen or not happen, where Dana gets fired, but I'd be okay with it tomorrow. I'd be okay if I woke up here tomorrow and saw U of H let him go and made Doug Belk the interim the rest of the year. Like, there's nothing more to see here. Nothing. And frankly, if you are someone, and again, I don't tell anyone how to spend their money, but if you are in a position to support this program and you keep giving money to it under this coach, you are not doing anything but making your ego feel a little bit better by still being this coach's buddy. You're not doing anything to help this program by allowing this man to be the head coach of this program here for one more minute. It's beyond fucking over. And I'll be curious to see when the people who actually sign the checks at U of H decide to figure that out and do something. Like, I think this game, if it wasn't last week against Rice, it is certainly this week. This was his Levine UTSA game. This was his major Army game. I really don't see how you can come back from this program's just one of the most long-awaited games, regardless of sport, in so long, guys. We've been waiting for so long to have that Big 12 opener, and you see a not full crowd watch one of the least inspiring efforts I've ever seen Cougar football put out in almost 20 years of being a true dedicated fan of this program. I think we talked about, it was last week, rock bottom. Guys, this right here is rock fucking bottom. And that's the last thought I have about this game. Or I don't know, man. Maybe rock bottom is UT.
Next week
UT
could
next
be
month.
rock bottom.
I was like, if the Longhorns miss by 50, that might be rock bottom. So let's not make any grand.
Guys, no one has scored more than 14 points versus Sam Houston.
Jesus, no, Bobby, no.
We'll talk about that game later, but
I mean,
I think
we'll
we are
a little bit, but yeah.
I think we are at rock. To be clear,
that might get us there.
We're at rock bottom. I think at this point we're just seeing how far down we could go in the basement.
All right. Well, I think that
on that positive note,
I don't really have anything else for the game unless you guys are ready to go ahead and get to some forward reviews here.
Let's do it, buddy.
All right. So, I think my favorite two were a couple people that decided to maybe look a little bit on the brighter side. Carlitos Coug, not even embarrassed anymore. That's a good way to feel. Don't let it affect your mood. Chuck, similarly, fun night, bad team. That's the way to go. Have a good time, whether or not the team is any good or not. Some other people were a little bit more focused on the game sucking though, and that's fair. Amir had not shocked, same script. Chris had just not getting better. Death before decaf, completely unprepared once again. And Ken did not feel the same way about traveling to the game. He said not worth the airfare.
Same, Ken. A couple I liked. Gage had bad for mental health. I mean, can't argue with you too much on that one, Gage. Garrett's just like freeing up my Saturday. Speaking of positive, has an exclamation points. I'm gonna take that as a positive. Yeah,
it's easy to get rounds of golf on Saturdays during college football season.
It really is, man. It really is. Christopher had. I'm
fine
just
when
so
Aggies, Longhorns, all those guys are playing.
Exactly. I know the Aggies might be joining you guys on the links
Fair enough.
later, but I was gonna say you had the death before decab one, Dustin. Sorry. Michael had all phases were bad. I would push back a little bit, Michael. I thought the special teams had one good half. I enjoyed your tweet, by the way, Dustin. Quick aside, just like, well, the offense, you tweeted like, well, if the defense and special teams, and you said something about that, and then like in the third quarter, the defense and special teams, well, it's just like it's very much in the mood. Sorry, done with my quick aside. You guys got any other forward reviews that you want to highlight from this?
I have somebody named Bored Individual on Twitter said, I miss Clayton Tune. I kind of agree with it, but I don't think Clayton Tune would necessarily help us not run for 55 yards on 27 rushes. But I did like it. I like the sentiment there. And then Tyree said generationally bad offensive scheme, which, yep.
Yeah, Sam, you had one from Gage, which is I don't like doubling up on people, but they also had start the buyout GoFundMe, which I appreciated. You mentioned a Michael who has said all phases bad. There's a different Michael who was pushing back, who had the special teams program, which I liked. Our friend Bill generated turnovers, couldn't capitalize. And Nicholas just had to hang it up, Dana. Frederick, there was an attempt, which was there? I don't know. And then maybe the last one, my favorite that I'm going to end on, Jim, who just said, I scored as many ... and then trailed off, which you can just, fill
in the
your brain kind of fills in with 4 words of its own. Offensive touchdowns as Houston.
Just a quick aside on a little game note, you said, Bill said, got turnovers, couldn't capitalize. Just a real quick thing. I think I sent this to you guys. Why do we not take shots after quick changes? Like, we get a quick change and it's always a big thing. Like, take the shot, try the shot, see what happens. We did it once, which was nice, but just throughout the whole year, it's just like, we get the quick change. We got the momentum. Crowd's going crazy. We're having a good time. Pick up 2 on a draw. It's like, just give me 1 deep. Just throw 1 up. I just need 1. Go score quick. The defense is rested because it got the quick change. It's pumped up. Take advantage of it. And we never do it. It's baffling to me.
It's like option A and option B. Option A is a 1 to 3 yard run. Option B is the ball going off Matthew Golden or Joseph Manjak's hands on an incompletion. That was definitely not a
Either
deep
way,
shot.
it's only
Yeah.
a yard. You might as well take
Yeah.
the deep shot.
Look, Bobby, what do you expect us to pay $4.5 million a year for a coach with a great offensive reputation to have him actually use it? I think you're being a little
That would be
unrealistic there,
ridiculous.
fella.
That would be ridiculous, man.
All right, guys. Well, we're almost an hour into this, and I'm on page like 2 out of 9 of my notes.
Yeah,
So
me too.
keep it running here and
Hurry up,
talk about
hurry
the
up.
Big 12 week that was. Bobby, I'll throw to you. Go ahead and tell us how your team's in the Big 12 this week.
TCU did well. Baylor, they did beat Long Island, but they looked awful. They only won this game 30-7, and guys, this was a 9-point game at halftime. So this game was a lot closer than it should have been between Long Island and Baylor. Their quarterback Sawyer Robertson, he went only 10 of 23 for 113 yards and 1 touchdowns. They need Shapen back, and they need him back quickly. He's still, as of today, kind of a toss-up. They said when he got injured, it would be between 2 to 3 weeks, and we've kind of reached 2 weeks. We're heading into the 3rd week, and they really nothing's been decided yet. I mean, it is still early. It's Tuesday before the game, and they need him because they are hosting Texas this week. So we shall see. So that is Baylor. UCF looked dominant versus Villanova. You expected them to dominate, and they did. Plumlee sat out with his leg injury, but they did have their USF transfer, Timmy McClain, stepped right in and went 23 of 33 for 2 touchdowns. UCF defense held Nova to 228 yards, which is pretty dang good, no matter who you're playing. I'll be honest, guys, it may be time to ask if UCF is going to be decent this year. They're going to be pretty good. They've looked pretty good. They went into Boise and won, and I think that's kind of the conversation you can kind of start having.
I was gonna say, like, you talk about the 4 new Big 12 teams and like who has bowl eligibility expectations. I think it's UCF. I think is basically. I think that's your number one. BYU after this weekend, not to get to my thing, I think has shown themselves worthy. That Cincinnati, even after a bad loss, I think still might be there. And then like somewhere below the carpet under my feet is University of Houston Cougars. Believe it or not, I've like one thing about the Long Island Baylor game. Go if you have just a spare time, go watch Long Island's quarterback's throwing motion. I've never seen
It's insanity.
I've never seen a quarterback at any. I'm not gonna try to describe it because I'd probably do a bad job of it, but I've never seen anyone throw the ball like him. And it's not even like a bad or good thing. It's just like it's I would say the closest thing I've seen to like the sidewind.
Like Uncle Rico through
I was just getting like a sidewinder.
He throws it like
reliever.
Uncle Rico through the steak at Napoleon in Napoleon Dynamite.
Poor kid. 4.9 also 4.9 yards per attempt and less than half your completions, Bobby. That's bad.
Yeah, not great. Who's next? Who wants to go?
I guess I'll talk about mine. I got a couple of really actually 3 really entertaining games. I will get Tarleton State, Texas Tech out of the way. Good job, Texas Tech, not losing to your FCS opponent and not making it especially interesting. Good job, guys. Kansas State, Missouri, I would argue one of the games of the weekend. Really, really exciting one. I mean, obviously, you had the crazy finish. And I think my favorite little nugget about that crazy finish is that was supposed to be a 56-yard attempt, but Missouri forgot how many timeouts they had and took a delay of game that knocked it back to 61 yards. No biggie. Harrison Mevis knocks it through from 61 yards with, I think, a few yards to spare at zeros to beat K-State after K-State beat Missouri pretty mercilessly last year. In Manhattan, it was a very close game. I mean, I think Missouri is probably a good bit better than the 2022 version, so I don't know if I would take a lot of bad things away if I was a K-State fan, but Brady Cook throwing for well over 300 yards against what was supposed to be a pretty good K-State defense, but had some secondary questions. Probably not the best. Really entertaining game in Fayetteville. BYU, although I would say this, there are no bad wins over an SEC opponent if you're BYU, but I wouldn't say the offensive issues are fixed just yet with the Cougs. With the U, they made some things happen off of turnovers, but I think they did a pretty good job holding a good Arkansas rushing offense to 4.5 yards a carry. Again, don't know if I think BYU solved their offensive issues, but I think anytime you can go in there, beat an SEC team, hold them to 0 fourth quarter points, I think you feel pretty good about that, especially considering 2 weeks ago this is a team that beat Sam Houston 14-0. We're asking like, is BYU maybe the worst newcomer. I think it's been pretty established who is the worst newcomer at this point. And also I think BYU has shown themselves capable of doing some good football things. But nice feel-good win also for my fourth and final team, West Virginia, who beat the Pitt Panthers in the backyard brawl. I thought really fantastic. I noticed the gymnastics, the people cover, I guess the crew covering the game were trying to do to not hear the West Virginia crowd all yelling "Eat shit, Pitt" during Sweet Caroline.
I didn't know they did that. I didn't know they did that, and then I saw it, and I was like, "That's the coolest thing ever." I wish we had a rival that we hated that much.
It's so good. Like for all the bad things that realignment has done, if you could have this realignment and still guarantee games like that happen on an annual or almost annual basis, I feel like that blunts a lot of the bad stuff that realignment has done. The Pitt and West Virginia being in different conferences did not give that game one iota less of juice. I thought the Mountaineers did a good job also dealing with the fact that Garrett Green went down injured early. Still don't think that offense is going to be to its potential if Nico Marchiol has to run it for an extended period of time. But I mean, you don't ever feel bad about any kind of win like that over Pitt. I think Pitt might have some real problems offensively, but that's not something you need to concern yourself with if you're a West Virginia fan. I guess you're only concerning yourself with saying eat S Pitt at the right time during Sweet Caroline. So I think a feel-good win for a program that hasn't had many feel-good wins over the years. Those were my four Big 12 teams. A lot of feel-good stuff. And Dustin, I know for a fact your four don't have a lot of feel-good stuff here from week 3.
I was going to say, I'm glad that most of your 4 teams had nice, fun weeks, Sam, because week 3 for my teams was a dumpster fire. I think is probably the best way I could describe it. It's so rough that there are going to be multiple references, comparisons as I describe these 4 games to U of H. So that's kind of where we're at. It starts with Iowa State losing to Ohio 10-7. I made a comment previewing this game that probably neither team would get to 20 points. That was an understatement. Iowa State dealing already with the loss of a lot of key personnel this year due to the gambling probe, then had a bunch of players out sick with an apparent case of food poisoning. They got a bunch of the players. It was announced. Like I'm tuning into the game, like I hear clones, like right before. There's always that news that like the reporter knows, but they've been told they can't say it until right before kickoff. So it's too late for the team to like game plan around it. And this one was, oh yeah, by the way, like a bunch of Iowa State players got food poisoning and either aren't playing or like aren't at 100% today. That included Iowa State freshman quarterback Rocco Becht, who wasn't feeling well but played anyway, which was maybe kind of a questionable decision given that, you know, they have any other scholarship QBs on the roster and he wasn't feeling great. And it's not like he's been setting the world on fire as a freshman thus far. In his defense, though, you know, he did have more success moving the ball through the air than the Ohio quarterback did, and his team just got out rushed 112-38 by a MAC team, which, you know, indicates that there are some issues there that aren't necessarily just freshman quarterback related. Becht, although not to his credit, also threw a couple of picks and couldn't get his team into the end zone for the first 55 minutes of the game, so he's not grading out super highly either. And yeah, just Cyclones basically the same thing that you saw last week against the Hawkeyes, which is they couldn't move the ball worth a damn. Finally got it going a little bit right at the end. They got a touchdown with 4:15 left to break the Bobcats shutout, but once again, it was much too little, too late. So yeah, as someone who prefers higher scoring football and is a U of H and Iowa State fan, this football season has been such a treat, let me tell you. And yet, I swear I'm being serious when I say this. I think Iowa State had the best game of any of my 4 teams this week. They lost by 3 on the road to a MAC team that won 10 games last year and looks like they're probably at least MAC good this year. So as you listen to my next 3 games, tell me if you think anybody actually outplayed the Cyclones this week. Let's start with Cincinnati, who lost at home to Miami of Ohio, 31-24 in overtime. This is a game that I whiffed on pretty badly as I was out here last week confidently predicting that Cincinnati was going to cover the 14-point spread. Instead, they lost their 16-game winning streak in this rivalry in front of their home fans at Nippert Stadium. It was close the whole way. Bearcats took a 3-point lead early in the 4th quarter. A couple possessions later, Redhawks drive all the way down. Actually had first and goal from the 4, second and goal from the 2, but they went all Dana Holgerson and threw a couple of weird incomplete passes from the 2-yard line, had to kick a game-time field goal. And on the ensuing Cincinnati drive, started with about 5 minutes left. The Bearcats did a masterful job of slowly marching down the field, gobbling up the clock, and setting the kicker up for an extremely manageable 35-yard field goal for the win with just seconds left on the clock. And it was blocked, so we went to overtime. Miami got the ball first. 2 plays, they're in the end zone. Cincinnati then drove down an amazing sequence. Cincinnati needing the touchdown to tie the game and send it to double overtime. First and goal from the 2, commits a penalty, gets backed up. Regains it, second and goal from the 2, commits a penalty, gets backed up. Gets back up there, fourth and goal from the 2. Emory Jones throws an interception, game over. Jones did run for over 100 yards and a touchdown in this one. But after just throwing the ball all over the place against Eastern Kentucky in the opener, his passing has been mediocre to bad against their 2 FBS opponents. Only completed 18 of his 34 passes in this one, had 2 picks, including the one that ended the game. And that was a bad loss for Cincinnati at home against a very mediocre Miami of Ohio team, but it was definitely not the worst loss from my teams this week, because that definitely belongs to Oklahoma State getting smoked by South Alabama by the tune of 33-7. The one Cowboy touchdown in this one came early in the fourth quarter when the game was well and truly out of hand. And this is a South Alabama team that you will remember got comfortably outclassed by Tulane in the opener. Again, not that Tulane's a bad team, but if you get outclassed by a team that got outclassed by Tulane, that's still probably not a great sign. Funny, last week when I said, oh yeah, okay, Oklahoma State beat Arizona State, but these 2 teams are probably really bad. Don't need to read too much into Oklahoma State getting that win. Arizona State went out and lost 29-0 at home to Fresno. So that was the epitome of that Oklahoma State win, meaning absolutely nothing. And this one, LaDamian Webb of USA had 151 yards and 2 scores on just 18 carries. Oklahoma State did their 3 quarterback thing again. Here's how they did. Gunnar Gundy, 9 of 18 for 64 yards, took 3 sacks. Alan Bowman, 6 of 12 for 42 yards with an interception. Garrett Rangel, 1 of 5 for 8 yards. And friends, if you thought that Dana Holgerson is out of his mind for saying that there's nothing wrong with Houston's play calling, sit down for a minute so I can tell you about his buddy up in Stillwater, who has also been around for a million years, also very much used to be considered an offensive guru, also has an offensive coordinator who's just a guy that's been following around for like a decade and, hasn't done much else. Mike Gundy, after that game in which Oklahoma State lost 33-7 to South Alabama, in which the quarterbacks performed in the way that I just described, was asked to grade his team's quarterbacks play and said, they were all pretty good. So that's a way to look at things. I'm going to have less of a rant on that one because it's not my team, but the Oklahoma State alternate reality version of myself had an aneurysm when he said that. So 2 coaches I suspect won't be, have been around for a long time, and I suspect won't be around for too much longer. And then the last up was Kansas, who was playing at Nevada, who, if you'll remember last week, I mentioned that Nevada had previously lost by 27 points to FCS Idaho. So after the way my first 3 teams played, there's no way that Kansas loses to Nevada, right? They didn't, but they were tied in the fourth quarter. Nevada had a 13-play, 75 yards, 7.5 minute march to tie the game up early in the fourth quarter. And Kansas, to their credit, responded with a decisive TD with 6:20 to go. Didn't allow Nevada to get anywhere near the end zone out on their last 2 drives. And yes, sure, it was a road game. You know what else was a road game? Idaho having to go to Nevada when they won 33-6, and Kansas needed a fourth quarter touchdown to sneak by 1 score. Jayhawks didn't run the ball especially well. They had the game's only turnover, and despite having a massive edge in yards and first downs, and the fact that this game kind of always felt like Kansas was going to hold on and win, they very nearly didn't. Like, teams that feel like they're going to win don't win a lot, and Kansas very nearly took, I don't know, it would have been right there. It wouldn't have been as dramatic, but it would have been to a dramatically worse team than South Alabama. Like, that would have been an unbelievable 0 for 4 if they had pulled that one out for my 4 teams. But the one victory for my 4 teams was barely getting by maybe one of the couple of worst FBS teams in the country. So rough week to be a team that I am following here in the Big 12 this year. Let me just say that.
You know what's wild, guys?
Yeah. What's wild, guys?
So Mike Gundy and Daniel Holgerson, who of us have correctly, I think, identified as guys who are just so beyond, are so like off what is currently like innovative offense this current season. Dana Holgerson's 2010 like Oklahoma State offense, the team coached by Mike Gundy, I think is one of the gold standards for explosive like passing offense like in football history. Period. The Brandon Whedon's first season, there's an unbelievable offense, one of the very best since I think all of us became college football fans, and yet I think a really good demonstration of how if you don't iterate, if you don't evolve what you do, if you aren't open to new concepts, that the game will absolutely 100% of the time leave you by, no matter how much of an innovator you were at one time. The only thing I wanted to add, Dustin, is God, how I thought this when I saw the score is just like, how much worse is JJ Cole if they're not willing to at least give him a look against a MAC team when your QB1 is sick? He was a big recruit. He's the level of recruit that Iowa State doesn't always get at quarterback. And yet Matt Campbell and staff were like, no, Rocco Brecht, sick and playing not very well, is a better option here for us to beat Ohio. I think, I'm not saying anything you don't know,
but
but
a redshirt situation, right?
I mean, you can play 4 games.
That's
that's also
yeah.
fair. Also fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It should
Also
be one
fair.
of the games, right? No, it is. It was a bizarre decision. It was a very confusing string of words when the reporter was like, everyone got food poisoning, damn it, including Rocco Becht, damn it. Who is going to play anyway?
Damn it. Damn it.
Doesn't make sense, Matt Campbell. What are we doing? I don't know. In terms of other games, it was kind of around college football, non-Big 12. It was kind of the week of the almost shocking upset, right? Wyoming hung tight in Austin before losing to the Longhorns. In college, right there against number 3 Florida State, only lost by 2. Alabama was out South Florida, tied 3-3 at the half, and only ended up winning 17-3. One of the weirder, more surprising games. And then Georgia was at home and trailing South Carolina 14-3 at halftime before kind of finally exerting their will in the second half. So a lot of like almost upsets. We did get a couple of actual upsets though. Number 11 Tennessee lost to the Florida team that got worked by Utah. I was very amused. I think flipping through and heard some SEC announcer early on in the game like, oh well, Tennessee is certainly going to win in Florida for the first time or whatever. And again, I think just the like, oh well, Florida lost to Utah, they're not good. But it's like, maybe Utah is just better than more than 1 or 2 SEC teams this year. And then my other upset, Sacramento
They struggled
State.
against Baylor though.
Yeah, that's true. Sacramento State beating Stanford 30-23. Congrats to the ACC on their new edition of Stanford Cardinal football.
Army also, going into UTSA and kind of punching them in the mouth.
Certainly says something about that week 1 win, doesn't it, guys?
So you had, yeah, it's not great. It's not great. And then I don't know if you guys saw this. Not was like this crazy, national game, but the UNT versus La Tech game, I know you said you have a reason to at least pay attention to it, Dustin, but Louisiana Tech puts up 23 to almost complete the comeback in the 4th quarter. UNT kicks the field goal as time expires. Guys, UNT was up 37-20 with 10 minutes left to go in this game. And then La Tech ties it up with about a minute left. UNT goes down, kicks the game-winning field goal with like 2 seconds left in the game. So just kind of a fun game. Anytime someone's down 17 with 10 minutes left to go in the game and they come back, it's kind of fun, kind of interesting. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh yeah, I was locked in on this game the whole time. But you see the final and you're like, and they kind of tell you what happens. You go watch the highlights and you're like, holy moly, this was probably kind of a good game. So just kind of a fun one there.
If Bobby's breaking the seal on teams that he lives close to in the group of 5, I'm just going to point, we're over on time, so I'm not going to go, but I think, and I'm not just saying this because I live in the city where this university is, but UNLV Vandy, absolutely wild finish. And it's Vandy, so I'm not going to be like, it's an SEC capital S win, but it's UNLV football, one of the most woebegone Division I football programs historically. That's a big win for the Rebels in year 1 under Barry Odom. Obviously, if they can continue in Mountain West play, but they were down 17 early in that one and found a way to come back and win. And just, again, won't go into the full details of it, but as I was watching them come back, I was just like, this team with their backup quarterback, shout out Jaden Maeva, Henderson representing, throwing down the field to win this game. And I'm just like, they trust their redshirt freshman backup quarterback more in this offense than we trust a 4th-year guy with a offensive-minded head coach we're paying $4.5 million a year to in year 5. Like, I don't want to make everything a referendum.
You don't have to compare everything to us, Sam. You don't have to compare everything to us.
I generally don't, but I couldn't help it as I watched the highlights. I'm just like, we would never let or even effectively do what Jade Maeva did to get the Rebels to come back and beat the Commodores. So won't spend any more time on it, but we're keeping an eye on those UNLV Rebels.
Go Rebs.
All right. Well, next up, Houston on Saturday will be hosting the Sam Houston State Bearcats. Bearcats now underway in their first FBS season. You may remember them winning the FCS National Championship back in that spring 2021 season. They followed it up with a really strong fall 2021 season, but really struggled last year in their final FCS season and are entering the FBS this year and somewhat of a rebuild, which is, I think, noticeable when you look at their first 2 games that they've played and realize that they are yet to score an FBS touchdown of any kind, offensive or otherwise, because they open up the season with a 14-0 shutout loss at BYU that we mentioned a couple times now, followed it up with a 13-3 loss to Air Force at NRG Stadium, and then had a bye week this past week. They've not scored 3 points through 2 games by accident. They are rushing for under 1.5 yards per carry as a team. Even if you pull out the 5 sacks that they've taken, their top 2 running backs are averaging 2 and 2.5 yards per carry respectively. And quarterback Keegan Shoemaker averaging just 4.1 yards per pass attempt with 3 interceptions through 2 games. So, Houston's defense has been hot and cold thus far. But my goodness, if they can't shut down this Sam Houston State offense, something is very, very wrong. And we will no longer just be talking about the U of H offense being bad. We'll have to spread it around if Sam Houston scores 21 on us or something like that. But the flip side of that, they've played really well defensively, right? They held a BYU team that just scored. And again, I know Sam, you mentioned it wasn't all offensive. There was a lot of turnover and stuff, but BYU teams that scored 38 in Fayetteville, scored 14 in Provo. An Air Force team that scored 42 and 39 in its other 2 games, scored 13 against these Bearcats. They've been good against the run, both against a traditional run team like BYU and an option team in Air Force. Keaton Slovis of BYU, who looked at least serviceable at Arkansas, looked just flat out awful in his home game against the Bearcats. So I guess my question to you guys is how on earth is U of H going to move the ball in this game? Because I have no idea.
You got to win 3-0. Like you got to get a good special teams return. Hopefully you have better athletes and you get something like that. Like, I don't see us putting up these mind-blowing offensive numbers, but I think Sam and I were talking about this game and the line and the over-under on this. And he said that he thought it opened kind of high, Houston minus 12.5. He's like, I was like, this just feels like a game where we're going to come out and put up 42. There's no rationale behind thinking that way. There's no like, oh yeah, it would just be the most U of H thing ever to like get into a shootout in this game and win like 42-28 or something like that to cover. And just like, there's no logic to what I'm saying. I can't be like, oh, well, statistically they do that. Like, I can't do that. It's just like, this just feels like some shit we would do. And I'm right. That's why you're both smirking right now. Cause this is some shit.
I'm smirking because I feel like you're making fun of Sam and I with that voice that you just did.
No, my voice is only like half that nasally. Come on now.
It just is totally one of those things where we're just going to put up, like, we're just going to come out and just put up our best offensive performance and just come out with a win by 24 where we just put up a ridiculous amount of points. I don't know why. Again, there's no logic to it. It's just one of those things because that's just the shit we do, guys.
I mean, you're staking your position here such that if that happens, you could just be like, I was the only, you could genuinely be like, it's rare. People love to be like, oh, I was the only one that predicted this. It's like, I was the one saying Dana wasn't right for this program. I was like, fuck you, buddy. No, you weren't. Like, but this is genuinely, a, like, I staked a position that very, very few other people did and actually came out right. So if you call your shot there, Bobby, like, listen, I'll credit to you. I will not take one bit away from it. And I would just say back to Sam Houston State, like, I know you don't feel good about 3 points in 8 quarters if you're a Bearcat fan, but I think you got to feel at least pretty decent that one phase of the game is Division I FBS ready for you guys, right? Like, I think that's pretty good. It doesn't take away from the fact that their offense looks historically futile, but I mean, you're making a jump to a different weight class of football. Like, some of that is to be expected. I think it's fair. And there's been some questions about whether Keegan Shoemaker is the answer at quarterback. They have Grant Cannell, a extremely well-traveled grad transfer, played previously at UNT and Arizona. Didn't light the world on fire out of those places, but Grant Cannell at least has some Division I FBS quarterback experience, which Keegan Shoemaker does not. Really interesting head coach, by the way. I just want a quick aside. Sam Houston's coach, Casey Keeler. I think it's cool Casey Keeler finally gets a chance to coach in FBS football because I think he's one of the best FCS coaches out there. Was won Delaware's first ever Division I FCS title in 2003. Had a really successful run there.
Yeah, I remember that.
Kind of. I wouldn't say it tapered off a bit there, but you win a championship, you set impossibly high expectations for yourself. And Keeler ultimately lost his job there because of that, but goes to Sam Houston, turns him into a team that eventually wins the spring 2021 FCS national championship. So I think it's cool to see him take this program to that level. And it's kind of wild to see the Bearcats here. Less thrilled that we're about to potentially face this opponent that is genuinely pretty good on one side of the ball, and that one side of the ball goes up against the Cougar offensive unit that I think has just been an unmitigated disaster here in this young season. I think I'm not going on the Bobby, we're gonna score 40 something points train here. I'm not jumping on that with you, bud. Even I risk cold taking myself here, but I do see this team having a better offensive game. I don't see them having a good enough game for me to talk myself into anything like this team being a good offense, but something about me can't shake. I'm probably halfway between Dustin, who's just like, I think rightfully, I don't see how we're going to score points against this team, and Bobby, who's just like, we're going to score 40 something. I don't know why, but I just see it happen. I think I'm like in between where you guys are. And I think we're going to win this game like 24-13 or something like that. And we're going to be like, well, we didn't lose to Sam Houston, but I don't think anyone's going to walk away from that feeling especially optimistic about the rest of the season.
I do want the record to show that, like, if I had a gun to my head and I had to choose one, it would be Dustin, right? Like, I just want the record to show. Also, I could see it totally being Dustin, and all logic points to it being Dustin. I've just watched this team for 15 years now. This just feels like one of those games where we come out and do this. I do have a question for you guys, though. Do you think there's going to be a good amount of Sam Houston fans at this game? Like,
oh yeah,
I'm
for
looking
sure.
at tickets right now.
Yeah.
Like, I pulled up ESPN. I pulled up ESPN to kind of check out, stats and that kind of stuff. According to Vivid Seats, tickets are as low as $4 for this game. You think that there's not going to be some Sam Houston fan who's just like, we're not doing anything else. Let's go. This is our first time playing U of A, like, as an FBS school. I don't know. Like, just as much as a U of H fan could come out and say it, I feel like Sam Houston State should at least be more excited because they're moving into the FBS, right? And they're getting to play a P5 school in their hometown. They got a huge alumni base here. Like, with fees, this thing's like $10. If I were a Sam Houston fan, I'd be like, yeah, even if I had plans that Saturday, I'd be like, what if I can kind of get this done in time to go to the game? I think this could be it's not going to be fully hostile, but I think U of H fans are fed up. They're not going to show up. I mean, like, we're going to show up. It's going to be like it has been the last couple of years where the diehards will be there, right? But the casual fan who was there for week 1 versus UTSA versus TCU, maybe they're not showing up, and this ticket gets bought by a Sam Houston fan. Again, it's not going to be hostile, but I think we're going to see a decent amount of orange in the stadium.
Yeah, no, I think Sam Houston is going to bring a decent number of fans, and I think Houston is going to have a extremely modest number of fans there, and I think the ones that are there are going to be ready to boo at the first sign of something going wrong. So, like, yeah, the potential for there to be not very many fans in the audience, a frustrating percentage of which are cheering for the opposing team, and a vanishingly small number of which are actually actively rooting for the home team is it's not going to be a great combination for sure. Yeah. I was gonna say, I feel like there's some, like, I don't know. I feel that there's just so much, like, gunpowder potential, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Because, like, we could lose to Sam Houston, and then at that point you do have to start asking, do we have the budget to get rid of this guy? We could beat Sam Houston in front of, me and 15,000 of my closest fans or something, friends, and go something like that. And then
I like fans.
And then I have some fans. It's ridiculous. No, and then Dana Holgorsen after the game goes in the press conference and starts cussing out the fans or something for no one showing up. But I don't know. Like anything is on.
You're right though. It's very much that gunpowder, waiting to blow. So I have
match for sure.
I got one more question for you. Oh, go ahead, Sam. I'm sorry.
Just real quick. Nothing like I don't have too much. I think you guys covered it pretty well. But I mean, I don't know if their alumni stats offhand, but I'd imagine Houston or the greater Houston area is where the most Sam Houston alums are, right? Like, maybe a lot of people.
I couldn't imagine DFW has more than Houston does.
So, like, there's going to be a lot of people who are just like, there's a general awareness that U of H is bad, but that won't matter to them, nor should it. Like, if they're able to beat U of H, this program that's had bigger stature, like, they're gonna be wild about it. And frankly, if they can do it, like, I wouldn't blame them one bit. Like, I would expect something on par, if not greater than what TCU had in terms of a visiting crowd there for the Bearcats with a K, for sure. Sorry.
So one more quick question. I know last week we talked about how much, Rice doesn't bring anything, and Rice, why are we doing home and homes with them or even looking at continuing doing that thing? What about subbing Rice with Sam Houston? How do you guys feel about that?
They have, I don't know, what is their football stadium capacity like? Because at some point you got to at least be.
It's not a huge stadium. It's definitely FCS.
14,000.
They're in the process of getting that thing up to like FBS standard. Yeah. So not like great.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why you would offer them a home and home, to be honest. But I mean, if they get it up to a reasonable amount, then you want to do a 2-for-1 or something and put them on the schedule a few more times. I'm not mad about it. If you just want to buy a game like we did this time, I'm not mad about it for sure.
Okay, just figured keep it local a little bit. If we're gonna have to go to Rice Stadium, at least you can go to Sam Houston and change it up a little bit. I do like the idea of Rice Stadium just being right there, which is nice. But
beautiful Hunts Vegas, Texas.
Hunts Vegas, baby.
No, I think it's a solid game.
I was just curious what y'all thought about it.
I think I'd lean more towards the just buying it periodically, or even maybe, God, I hate these games, but I don't know, maybe if we were in a decent stature, play at NRG, because the same Houston regularly plays games there, but that's just spitballing here. I don't think that would be great. I don't know if a game in Huntsville is super practical right now, but yeah, as an every few years to fill out the non-conference kind of opponent, I'd be good with it. Ask me on Sunday if they beat us, how I feel about that, Bobby. I think you'll get a different answer, but yeah, I think that's what I feel right now.
Man, I'm with you.
I hate to say this, but we're running out of like lower tier Texas football teams that haven't beaten us embarrassingly at least once. So we got to put somebody on the schedule probably.
Yeah.
Like UTSA, shit. Texas State, shit. Rice, shit. Sam Houston, maybe. Oh goddamn, we're running out of.
UTEP.
Oh no. I've been scarred plenty by UTEP. Tarleton, it is.
Central time zone teams only. Let's exclude UTEP entirely from the conversation. I really don't care enough to have any more Sam Houston thoughts. Do you guys have anything else before we talk about the Big 12 week to come?
Nope.
All right, let's jump into it. We're going to go by viewing order here. So we'll start at 11 o'clock in the 11 o'clock window. We've got a couple of games, starting with the Iron Skillet, Bobby.
Yes, so TCU SMU. TCU, this rivalry game, as you guys probably know, these are those schools' biggest rivals with each other. They play for the Iron Skillet. One's in Fort Worth, one's in Dallas, so they get to battle for control of DFW, even though that means nothing.
I was gonna say, does the winner get Irving and Arlington?
Yeah, as a resident of Irving, I'm like, go Horns. With TCU saying that they're not going to continue this game going forward, at least any idea of what they're going to do, it's going to be pretty fun. I think SMU is decent this year. SMU played OU closer than that score would indicate. Tell your significant other, Dustin, to cover your ears when I talk about that SMU OU game. SMU played them a lot closer than the final score seemed. SMU, Preston Stone, he's slinging the ball around, 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions this year. That hopefully is all the nice stuff about SMU I have written down here. I do have written down that Preston Stone is quite possibly the most SMU name of all time. That's fantastic. TCU is better than SMU, so I like TCU here. they're going to have to get the stone, right? They're going to have to pressure him and get in his face, which I think they can do. If they do that, I think TCU has the depth to win there.
Preston Stone can only be the most SMU name ever if he's Preston Stone the third. Then we can.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
The other game in the 11 o'clock window, Oklahoma at Cincinnati. The Bearcats 14.5-point underdogs against the number 16 Sooners. Exciting non-conference game for them against an SEC opponent here. Sooners haven't exactly challenged themselves thus far. You're not helping. I'm trying to keep a straight face.
Sorry.
They won a fairly ugly game, like you mentioned, against SMU 28-11. They sandwiched that one between wins over Arkansas State and Tulsa by a combined score of 139-17, which is pretty good. Dylan Gabriel back at quarterback for another season. Looks like a Heisman dark horse, although certainly he needs to, continue showing it against higher quality teams. But through 3 games, over 900 yards of passing, 12 total touchdowns, just 1 pick. Pretty strong start to the season. And yeah, for Cincinnati, I'm just way less confident about this game than I was a week ago before. Number one, I saw Cincinnati's big scalp Pittsburgh lose to West Virginia fairly decisively. And, before Cincinnati, more importantly, got beat by Miami of Ohio. So that 14.5, I think, feels like a fair line, even with this game taking place at Nippert Stadium in Cincinnati. I will say, I think this Bearcat team is probably not done playing good football this year. I have more confidence in their ability to bounce back from one, bad performance than some other teams. But, this is an 11 o'clock kickoff, like I mentioned, which I think is a bummer and probably hurts Cincinnati's chances because, nip at night is just one of those things that tends to be just Cincinnati doesn't tend to get beaten when they play at home at night. So I think it's a little bit of a bummer that you get the atmosphere will be maybe 5% less crazy because it's not the night game, but I still think it's just gonna be a crazy rowdy atmosphere. And I think there's enough talent on the Cincinnati team that while I think the 14.5-point line is fair, I still think that it's not inconceivable that the Bearcats do something surprising.
I think my only question is, one, what is OU defensively this year? Like we've seen they're going to have to shut down SMU. I think SMU is a good offense. I think that's a positive data point for Brett Venables' second-year defense there. But can Cincinnati do anything without really having a consistent pass game, which we haven't seen from them against any FBS opponent? I think that's why I have a harder time seeing the Bearcats make it competitive. And I remember even when we were doing our preseason pod, our Cincy 10-12 friends were talking about how it looked like a nip at night game. And I looked at the schedule. I was like, oh, it's in the 11 a.m. time slot, but they'll have a great crowd there. Like they're going to fill the place up and it's going to be a loud and hostile place to play. But I can that overcome the fact that Cincy hasn't looked like they're able to throw the ball against any FBS team, especially not what looks like a pretty good one in Oklahoma?
I think for them to have a chance, it takes Emory Jones throwing the ball better than he's thrown it the last couple of weeks. And it also takes probably Cincinnati being, +2 in turnovers, having a special teams touchdown, something like that also for sure. And then in the 2:30 central window, we've got a couple of Big 12 conference games. BYU will be at Kansas and Texas Tech will be facing West Virginia. Sam, that last game I know was 2 of your teams. You want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, I'm really curious about this one. And again, Texas Tech's defense has not lit the world on fire at this point. I mean, again, Nico Marchiol, West Virginia's backup quarterback, who's almost certainly going to be the starter in Morgantown on Saturday against the Red Raiders. Is he comparable to the Wyoming quarterback, Andrew Peason, who did such a good job situationally against the Red Raiders? I'm just kind of shocked that the Red Raiders are a 6-point favorite in Morgantown, given that this fan base is going to be at the highest point that's probably been since Dana's last year there before they kind of skidded to the finish in the 2018 Big 12 race. That's going to be West Virginia's not going to be as hyped for Texas Tech as they are for Pitt, because they're not going to be hyped for anyone as much as they are for Pitt, but they're going to be at an absolute high point for the first time in many, many years. And you're telling me this Texas Tech team, which hasn't looked very reliable against FBS competition, is going to beat them. I'm not sure about that. But again, Pitt's a very bad offensive team. The Red Raiders have shown flashes of promise with Tyler Shuck at quarterback. And if West Virginia is as bad as we think they could be defensively, then maybe I'm just overlooking a very important aspect of this game. But I have a hard time seeing this Texas Tech defense stop anybody, even West Virginia, their backup quarterback. And kind of like I said, kind of shocked that the Red Raiders are about a touchdown favorite going into Morgantown, which is a tough place to play, I think, even in not the best times. But when this team and fan base are feeling pretty good, I think a downright hostile place to play. And not sure how I see the Red Raiders winning that one on Saturday.
Yeah, another game with a surprising line, I think, is the BYU at Kansas, which I think opened with Kansas as a 7-point favorite and has since gone to 9 when I checked earlier this afternoon. After, like I said, BYU looks like very much more the impressive of the two teams this past week, at least as both teams were winning on the road. But, certainly the home field advantage plays a role here with the game being in Lawrence. The game's already a sellout, several days in advance here. And I expect, the Kansas fans, again, it's, they're not huge rivals with BYU, but they have their, semi-respectable team for the first time in forever. That's a fan base that, is certainly hungry to have a, at least semi-respectable football team to cheer for, and they do have that. So, I expected to see Kansas as a favorite, but maybe like in the 3 to 5 range, not the 7 to 9 range. This one feels closer to a toss-up than it feels to a 9-point Kansas edge to me. I don't know. I'm intrigued by this one. Feel like it could go any number of ways. I'm really not quite sure what to make of either of these teams yet. They're both 3-0, but they're both, I think, pretty enigmatic. So I don't know. Maybe Kansas covers that, but it seems like an awfully high line, Sam.
Yeah, I think it's with Kansas, you have to kind of separate the first 2 games from the last one. Are they more the team that comfortably beat Illinois and I think looked good against an FCS opponent, or are they the team that barely beat a UNR team that might be one of the very, very worst in FBS? A UNR team is going to be one of the very, very worst in FBS this year. Like you don't want to judge a team entirely off a bad week. But also you see that and you're just like, well, maybe this team has some fatal flaws here. I think if this game was in Provo, there would not be a BYU line high enough almost for me to take it. But the fact that it's in Lawrence, it's going to be a sellout. I don't know. I think the Jayhawks have a bounce back week here, even if I think definitely not the best week 3 result for the Jayhawks, even that came out the winner.
Yeah, you talked about still questions about BYU's offense, still very much questions about Kansas's defense. So we'll have a couple of questionable units going up against each other. And then in the 3 o'clock window, game of the week, baby. Oklahoma State at Iowa State. Let's go. Cyclones actually 3.5-point favorites at last that I've seen. And this one, I texted my aunt, who's a huge Iowa State fan. I was like, that Iowa State's a 3-point favorite this week. And she's like, what? Yeah, no, believe me. Somehow it's possible. And somehow it even kind of makes sense.
Yeah, that's the worst part.
Yeah. I guess the one word for this game is yuck. That's yeah. I mean, as much as I am scared to express any optimism on behalf of my Cyclones, I can kind of see the 3.5-point line there. Iowa State's been pretty good defensively this year, whereas the Cowboys have looked pretty lost on offense with the 3-quarterback thing that they're running. It's not really working that well. And while Iowa State's offense has been awful, OSU's defense hasn't exactly been anything special either. So I guess maybe it's a little bit easier to see Iowa State moving the ball than it is to see Oklahoma State moving the ball in this one. I don't know. I guess that probably depends on maybe hoping that Rocco Becht has now finally played enough FBS football that he starts doing something before the 4th quarter. We'll see how that goes. I don't know. I don't feel real confident in much about this game other than the fact that it's just going to be ugly, bad football. And I'm also pretty sure that, I should say I'm not sure either of these teams wins another game after Saturday. Like I genuinely looked at their schedule and I was like, you've got maybe 1 or 2 games, each of these teams the rest of the year, that I feel like they even have a chance to win. So I think this is a game that, if nothing else, both coaches are going to desperately want it to try to make the season look a little less bad at the end of the year. But call it the toilet bowl, the desperation bowl, whatever you want to call it. It's going to be some ugly football, and I will be watching it.
I was going to add, at least Iowa State is good at one phase. Like Iowa State is at least a good defensive team. They're a really bad offensive team, but they're at least a good defensive team. I don't think Oklahoma State has conclusively proven they're good at anything at this point in the season.
Yeah. And then at 6:30, we've got UT Austin at Baylor, Bobby.
All right, so Baylor versus UT. I had to get my notes in front of me, as you just saw. Baylor looks awful, but if Baylor's going to have any chance at winning this game, which I think is very slim, they need the ball first. And what they got to do is they got to go down and score, because I think the crowd's going to be excited. It's their final game versus UT. It's at home. Pretty sure it's at Baylor. Yeah, yes. It's at Baylor. I'm like, now I don't know why, but I'm like questioning myself as I do this. So crowd's going to be going crazy, right? Get the ball first. You go down, you score, you stop them. You get a stop, you get the ball back, you go down, you score again. halfway through, a third of the way through the first quarter, you're up 14-0. That's the only way they're going to win this game, in my opinion. I think they're going to have to come out, take advantage of the momentum, the excitement from the crowd with it being their last home game versus UT. And so I think, next thing UT knows, they're down 14 and they're trying to play catch up, which I think they will. Even if that does happen, but if Baylor wants any chance at winning this game, that's what they're going to have to do. So
I was gonna say, does anyone know
that's
Blake
kind
Shapen?
of my pretty basic thoughts.
Sorry,
no update on Shapen yet.
Yeah, so no update. Probably gonna be Sawyer Robertson, who couldn't complete half his passes against LIU against what looks like again.
So it's just going to be, you're going to have to ride the momentum and hope you come out, you kind of punch them in the mouth. They come out flat. You come out super excited, super pumped up. Your crowd's got you, you got the juice from the crowd and you're going to come back and win that game. That's the only way you're going to do that if you're Baylor, in my opinion.
All right. And then the final Big 12 game of the evening will be at 7:00. UCF will be at Kansas State. That's a Bobby team against the Sam team. Sam, you want to start us on this one?
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what UCF, who's going to be, and again, I know I'm talking about Bobby's team to start here, but I'm really curious about Timmy McClain, UCF's backup, a guy who's intrigued me since he was at South Florida. He kind of got thrown in the deep end early for the Bulls. Has been a really intriguing athlete. Honestly, I think a guy who might have a higher ceiling than John Rice Plumlee against a K-State defense that's definitely be licking its wounds after that game at Mizzou last week. I'm really interested to see what that looks like, whether my Timmy McClain being a better long-term bet than John Rice Plumlee thing bears fruit this week. I'm not so sure. I might feel a bit comfortable if they had a real veteran guy going to a tough atmosphere like Manhattan. And again, coming off a loss, you're going to get K-State's full focus, or as opposed to maybe they go out there and beat Mizzou comfortably. You're 3-0 and you're really feeling yourselves. Like, I don't think they're going to get an unfocused K-State team in Manhattan, which might be kind of scary. But this is a UCF team that I think has shown some defensive acumen. I think will challenge Will Howard in that offense. I think you saw last week the K-State offense wasn't the reason why they lost that one, but I think you just saw how dang good Deuce Vaughn was for that team. And as much as they have a good couple running backs replacing Deuce Vaughn, I mean, we know as Cougar fans, anytime a transcendent kind of offensive player leaves, it's not that you don't have good guys behind him. It's not Deuce Vaughn. Like, Deuce Vaughn is a one-of-one kind of guy. But curious to see. I think that K-State offense versus the UCF defense is going to be a fun strength versus strength matchup. Don't have any real strong lean besides that. I think, again, Timmy McClain versus that K-State defense might be some interesting stuff too.
Yeah, I definitely think if Plumlee was playing, I would have I could make a really compelling argument about UCF going into Manhattan and the Little Apple and winning the game and really covering the 4.5 that the spread is. But honestly, without Plumlee, you're kind of, like you said, Sam, you're playing with your backup. And while he was good for USF, was kind of thrown to the wolves, K-State is still a pretty good team this year. So it is going to probably be the best game in the Big 12 this week. I think it'll be a compelling game, an interesting game, but I do think that gun to my head, if I had to choose, I'm taking K-State -4.5.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
All right. And then looking at some other non-Big 12 games from the coming week, I really kind of have a trio that I grouped together because I think the Pac-12 has three ranked versus ranked, undefeated versus undefeated matchups this week. And I'm fairly intrigued by all three of them. You got two matchups that pit a future Big 12 team against a future Big 10 team. So I'll be rooting for our future conference mates in Colorado, at Oregon, as well as Utah hosting UCLA. A couple of really interesting games there. The Ducks 21-point favorites. So Vegas the game is at Outson Stadium, so that's part of it. But I think the Vegas maybe selling on the Deion Sanders experiment a little bit after they struggled against Colorado State this past week. And then finally at 6:00, we've got the Left Behind Bowl, Oregon State at Washington State. And both of these teams are ranked in 3-0 right now. So, they might be facing each other 8 times next year because they'll be the only two teams left in the Pac-12. So we'll get to maybe see a lot of this matchup in the future. But as for now, I don't know. It's got to be both fun and infuriating for those fan bases at the same time, watching, for example, a bunch of teams in the new Big 12 struggle and then be like, oh, but we're, good this year and we're going to have no conference next year. Sure. This is fine. So
yeah. Really enjoying this, boys.
Yeah, this is great. This is great. So I feel a little bit bad for them, but I am simultaneously jealous of the football teams that they both have this year. So, life's all about the trade-offs.
Yeah, the only one I would add is Ohio State versus Notre Dame. I know, we sometimes don't like doing those games, but you kind of have to acknowledge that one is going to be a big game. It'll be a fun atmosphere in South Bend. So
I'd be lying if I said I didn't have alerts turned on for that one. So.
I was just gonna say with the Pac-12, real quick, they have 3 fantastic games, like you said, Dustin. Also, 2 do you want to see a body games? You have USC at Arizona State and Washington hosting Cal. To just absolutely just like one of these teams is going to get beaten very badly. It is not USC or Washington. Yeah, I don't think there's any other really compelling games. Ole Miss at Bama again. We don't like to acknowledge the SEC, but I don't know, man. I don't like don't like Lane Kiffin or find him sympathetic. Certainly not with the recent developments with him, but I hate Nick Saban that much that I would still find it very funny if Ole Miss hung like 50 on them and beat them bad in Tuscaloosa. I'm not saying that's the most likely outcome. I'm saying I would find that amusing for about 30 seconds. And that's all I got from week 4 that has not been already covered by you guys.
I think. All right, I think we're like about 100 minutes into football, so let's turn to a different sport. Specifically, let's turn to Bobby's golf corner.
All right, so we have our Cougar golf, men's golf came through and played pretty well leading into round 3. So in the first 2 rounds, Cougs were actually 17 under and looking good. They were among the best, right? Your top 3 teams were Virginia, Wake Forest, Missouri. Those guys were all ranked top 50 in the standings. Houston is at 53. Just for a little bit of context here, what we're talking about in terms of these rankings. A lot of times you'll hear different teams and you get kind of excited. You're like, oh, they beat Michigan, and it's like Michigan's ranked 115. So the Cougs were in kind of that best of the rest. They were 17 under going through the first 2 rounds. And then in the 3rd round, Cougs shot an absolutely abysmal 12 over. It was the 3rd highest score of the round of any of the teams, and the top 2 in the 2 teams that were worst tied. And then it was the Cougs. Just one thing I did notice was that everyone scored, no matter the team, were a bit higher in round 3 than they were. So I'm not 100% sure, because I wasn't in Illinois, about the conditions that kind of came through and if they were, got tougher, if pin placements got tougher, things like that. But yeah, you don't want to do that. College of Charleston actually gained 12 strokes on the Cougs. They shot even that day and managed to jump the Cougs in the standing. So Cougs finished, I want to say 6th, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, 6th. And the only one that really kind of hurts to lose to is College of Charleston. College of Charleston, according to GolfStat, is the 146th ranked team. So really a bad one to lose to, especially if they are shooting even and you're shooting 12 over. So overall, they beat everybody they should, except for College of Charleston, and they lost to everyone that was ranked higher than them. It was kind of one of those where you finished about where you would expect. Maybe you'd like to see you beat College of Charleston and finish top 5 in this tournament, but overall, can't be too upset, can't be too happy with the performance. Santiago de La Fuente, it's just so steady. If you don't understand golf, just something to kind of look for is how consistent he is. So between the 3 rounds, he went 71, 71, and a 73, which is hovering right around even par. It's pretty good. But to only have 2 strokes difference between your best round and your worst round is just a level of consistency that's really hard to do. For instance, his teammate shot 69, and this is Hudson Weibel, went 69, 67. Those are ridiculous scores. Absolutely ridiculous scores. Then he went 81 in the 3rd round. It's the range there is just insane. So to see what De La Fuente did is really quite amazing, to see him go even 1 or 2 over, whereas you have 3 under, 5 under, 9 over. It's just it's really pretty cool to watch his scorecard and just kind of watch golf. And just going forward, if you do want to track Cougar golf, golfstat.com, they do live scoring. It was actually like a big controversy this year, just a little behind baseball. They've always been the official NCAA stat keeper. And if you ever go out to a tournament, there's people standing every like 3 holes, 4 holes, and they ask the players, hey, what's your scorecard look like? And they hand type it in like into their phone and it uploads. Well, the NCAA said, we're not using GolfStat anymore. And the college golf community lost their minds. And so they still have people out there, and they're still tracking it with volunteers and that kind of stuff. So really kind of cool. It's a real mom and pop thing that GolfStat runs. If you go to their website, it is not fancy at all, but it's really kind of cool. And just a little, if you want to track, if you know the Cougs are playing, you want to pull it up, you'll get an update every 3 or 4 holes.
They got some good like peripheral stats too.
For Cougar golf.
I was just gonna say,
yeah, exactly.
Would co-sign your endorsement of GolfStat. I think, as someone who's more of a golf novice than you, I think it's definitely helped me understand like rounds a bit better. So,
yep,
there you go. For GolfStat.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the team performance, kind of like you said, it was the overall performance isn't too bad. It was just so disappointing to see them go so abysmal in the 3rd round after the first 2 went so well. And
yeah, something had to have happened with the weather or something like that, because everyone went abysmal. Not everyone went that abysmal.
Yeah, most teams did at least a little worse, but I think Houston, more than anybody else in the field, really fell off a cliff, which is really just kind of disappointing. And then even at the like micro individual level, after 2 rounds, I was excited to see Houston doing well without Santiago de la Fuente having to lead the charge like he always seems to do, right? Yep. Everybody through 2 rounds, I think was within like 2 or 3 strokes of each other on Houston's team. And then, like you mentioned, De La Fuente had a decent 3rd round, and everybody else just cratered. The other 4 golfers besides him got worse by an average of 7 strokes from round 2 to round 3. So
not great.
Yikes. You know, I don't know. So
but that's how fickle the game is. That's how fickle golf is. I mean, one day you're shooting 67, the next day you're shooting 81, and it's just like, what in the world?
Yeah. But yeah, as far as the men's team, first 2 data points of the fall season, not doing a lot to dissuade me from my priors, being that Santiago de la Fuente is a good golfer, but it's not just kind of an average overall team.
Yep.
Then we'll just do what I mentioned with golf. The women will be in Norman for the Schooner Fall Classic this week after their ridiculously dominant performance to open fall play. So looking forward to see how they do in tournament number 2.
Let's go.
All right, and we do want to talk some Cougar volleyball, who had a fantastic week, like we mentioned way up at the beginning of this episode, stomped A&M and Liberty up in College Station. Cougs finish up non-conference play in damn impressive fashion this week. Open things up against an Aggie team that was receiving votes in the top 25 poll. Probably not going to have to worry about that anymore because the Cougs smoked them for the most part, jumped out to massive leads, ran away with each of the first 2 sets, 25-12 and 25-14. A&M, to their credit, did respond well, got into a highly competitive 3rd set that they were actually able to grab control of at the very end and win it 25-21. But then 4th set goes back Houston's way. They weren't quite as dominant as the first 2, but held the Aggies at arm's length and won the set 25-18 and won the match 3-1. Couple of individual performances wanted to shout out. Kellen Moran, just phenomenal in this one. The Aggies had really no answer for her. She wasn't Houston's primary offensive target, but every time they went to her, it felt like an automatic point. Moran had 11 kills in just 15 attempts, was a huge part of Houston's defensive effort as well, had a team-high 6 blocks. And then also really exciting, Katie Corelli had her best game as a Coug, led Houston with 13 kills while hitting .455, added 4 blocks to go with it. She's the lone outside hitter in Houston's primary rotation this year who isn't a 5th-year senior, so you like seeing those positive contributions from someone with eligibility left. But yeah, I mean, just in a game when Abby Jackson didn't hit all that great, Kenna Sauer didn't hit all that great, Houston still got a dominant team performance behind, just realizing that they have a lot of players that can contribute here.
Yeah, I would just add that Kenna Sauer, Abby Jackson, obviously very below their usual kind of offensive efficiency, but both had double-digit digs. It tells you that those 2 are going to always affect winning, even when it's not their best offensive game, as it makes Abby and Kenna such great volleyball players. And just to know that this team, and again, I think we joked when we previewed this one that A&M receiving votes was kind of a joke, and I don't step back from that, but that's a solid team, and they had a good crowd there. And the Cougars' 2 most veteran offensive players did not play especially well offensively, and you still won 3-1, and you won all three of the sets you won were not especially close.
Yeah, it's even if they're, our two offensive studs are struggling offensively, like you said, Sam, to know that they can still come through and affect the game in other ways. That's what good teams do. When your best players aren't having their best games, do you still win? Does everyone still contribute and get those W's?
And the Cougs kept the momentum going by smothering the Liberty Flames in a sweep 25-11, 25-16, 25-16. Just Houston's second sweep of the year as they finish non-conference play 7-2. I think a sign that Houston really challenged themselves in non-conference. And yeah, just a ludicrously dominant defensive performance against Liberty. Liberty only had 18 kills and had 29 attack errors. They had more attack errors than kills in all three sets. Here's my expert volleyball analysis. When the other team hits the ball over the net towards you, they're more likely to score a point for you than for themselves. That's pretty good. Abby Jackson and Katie Corelli paced Houston with 11 kills apiece. Not a lot of big stats to put up this one, given that this match was over about as quickly as it started, but I don't remember what the exact number was, but yeah, holding Liberty to hitting negative 100 something. Pretty good.
Pretty good.
29 attack errors would be a lot for 4 sets. For 3 sets, it's absurd.
Yeah, just the smother the flame thing.
Thank you. I swear my hand on a Bible. I was typing on my notes and I was like looking for a good word. I was like smother. And then I was like, oh my God, the flames. Yes. Love it.
This is one of the times where I highly recommend you go to YouTube and watch it, because as soon as you said it, you see me and Sam just.
I see what he's doing there.
I kept a straight face this time. I saw you guys laughing. I managed to power through. I'm proud of myself for this one. It's harder when I can see you guys to not laugh at my own jokes here. But going forward, Cougs open Big 12 play this coming Wednesday. Tomorrow, as we're recording this on Tuesday evening, they'll be at number 10 BYU. The Cougs will enter this game as number 20 in the country in the AVCA poll as they jumped up 2 spots this week. Yeah, like I mentioned before, but just crazy tough conference. Other teams in the rankings: number 9 UT Austin, number 10 BYU, number 17 Kansas, number 18 Baylor, 25 Iowa State, UCF, and TCU also receiving votes. So that's 6 of 13 teams in the top 25, 8 of 13 at least receiving votes in the top 25. It's crazy stacked conference. But yeah, the Cougs, like I said, jump into that conference with as tough as it gets, I think, playing number 10 BYU on the road to be their first ever Big 12 matchup. A game that will be televised nationally on ESPN2. The Cougars, I should say, come into this one with an 11-1 record with an early win over the current number 8 team, the Pitt Panthers, and a current loss to the current number 7 Washington State. Other Cougars. I will say, apart from those 2 huge matches, they didn't really play anybody else of note in non-conference. I think so. UH didn't play anyone ranked as high as those 2 teams, but I think maybe played a tougher kind of start to finish, more challenging non-conference schedule. For BYU, senior outside hitter Aaron Livingston, one to watch out for, already has 160 kills, over twice as many as anybody else on BYU. And that's actually, her kills per set rate is actually down a little bit from last year. So really tough attacking player. So really tough match, but I think, if you're looking for reasons for optimism, like I said, Houston, I think, has played a little bit tougher non-conference schedule. Maybe they have a more diverse offensive attack, you could say, but this BYU team is top 10 in the country for good reason. This would have been an incredibly tough match, even if it were at home, having to go play in front of what will likely be a sold out crowd because they support this team really well, playing at elevation. With BYU only being ranked 1 spot behind the Longhorns, and with Houston getting the Longhorns at home, this might be the toughest match on Houston's regular season schedule this year.
Yep. This is, like you said, probably the toughest on the schedule, and if I were being honest, probably the most important one. I think just overall, a win here really helps your cover up the couple of losses that we had that I said earlier. We're just kind of against those teams that are ranked around where you are. A big win here on the road is going to really help in seeding for NCAA tournament time.
I mean, this is a really,
the Cougar soccer program. Sorry, Sam, go ahead. I know we're battling some Wi-Fi issues here, but give me, you want to, throw some thoughts out here on the BYU match?
I'm like this close to just like naming and be like, this is an alleged luxury property. This is I booked this. I booked the travel for my company. I'm not gonna get too far afield. I'm like, still here. I booked the travel. I know how much it cost for me to have this hotel room for 3 nights, and that I have worse Wi-Fi than I do at home is truly something. I'm sorry if it is taken away from the experience for the watchers and the listeners here. But I would just say, like, I agree with you, Dustin. I think a team that's certainly seen some high level competition, but I would definitely say top to bottom, the Cougars have played a harder non-conference today, but I don't think that matters too much considering the level of opponent they're going to be. They're going to be probably a little bit better at home, like teams generally are. And I think it's really exciting that this is the level of volleyball team we're going to see in conference play. And it's not just UCF is good, but everyone else besides UCF is kind of direct. Like BYU is good. I think I would agree. BYU being away from home might represent your toughest conference game, but far from your only tough one. I know we've said it a lot here, but very exciting. Kind of a little preview of what we're getting men's basketball season where it's like, okay, well, we're not going to be able to put up a gaudy record this year, but the level of competition and seeing the Cougars compete against these kinds of teams, I think just makes it very, very exciting. As someone who's really been looking forward to see this program playing a very good volleyball league like the Big 12 offers.
Yeah, you go from having a conference with one quality opponent to your first 3 matches
All
of
of them
play are going to be on the road against ranked teams. So it's a challenge for sure. Speaking of challenges, Cougar Soccer opened their Big 12 slate this past week, getting shut out by Texas Tech 3-0 up in Lubbock. Cougs gave up goals in the 13th, 53rd, and 83rd. It was the threes was what was getting us. Minutes to a shutout loss in their first ever Big 12 match. And I think the nicest thing you can probably say about Houston is that I wouldn't say they got run off the field. The secondary stats all favored Tech, but not super dramatically. Houston got outshot 15-8. Shots on goal were 5-3. Corner kicks were 5-2. And I watched most of this one, and Tech was clearly the better team with the advantage of playing at home. But it wasn't like Houston was lucky to only lose 3-0 or anything like that. They were the lesser team, but certainly I think belonged in the field with Tech, and that's not nothing given that this is a Tech team that's number 9 in the initial NCAA soccer RPI rankings. They're number 25 in this week's coaches poll. So, I think in and of itself, not an awful result, but simultaneously, at least a little disappointing. Just, because as good as Houston has looked in scoring loads and loads of goals against the lesser teams in their schedule, against what is clearly the top 3 teams they faced thus far, Washington, Texas State, Texas Tech, 0 goals, shut out all 3 of those matches. So, a lot of Big 12 left to play, a lot of Big 12 play left to play. But, I think that Jaime Frias saying his preseason goals were to make the Big 12 and NCAA tournaments this year. I think one of those is practical, but I think we've seen enough Houston against good teams now to say that the second one of those might not be so realistic.
Yeah, you don't want to parse.
I don't have much to add.
I was going to
go ahead, buddy.
No, I don't want to parse 3-0 losses too much, but I mean, I think you were significantly more competitive than last year. Last year you were down 3-0 in the first 20 minutes, whereas this one I think you played them closer. I mean, they're both 3-0 losses, but to look at both of those games and not say this is a noticeably better Cougar team, now than 12 months ago. I think Texas Tech also is a better opponent than they were 12 months ago. But yeah, like you, Dustin, think the making a Big 12 tournament, sure, still possible. Didn't see anything in this game that says that's not, but I don't think this is a postseason team yet. And that's fine. It's the second year of this coach. This is a very young team, as I think we've pointed out a number of different times. So not a tragedy that we're not exactly there. Yeah, I think the real tests are going to be, I think the teams that are going to be closer to you than Texas Tech will probably be when it's all said and done.
Yeah, like you, Dustin, I watched most of this game, and like you said, just reiterating what you said, because you're just so smart, that just watching the game, it didn't feel like we were getting absolutely dominated and run off the field. After the first goal, you're like, okay, we can bounce back. It's early. Then the second one happens, and you're like, okay, let's keep it to 2. And then the third one happens, and you're like, all right, that's fine. So it like you said, it didn't feel like we got run out the building and we're just grasping for anything. We looked like we belonged on the field with them.
And going forward, the Cougs will have their first Big 12 home match this week, as they'll be hosting UCF on, I didn't put the day of the week in my notes, but it is definitely on Thursday. They'll be hosting actually their first 2 home matches of the week, of the year, I should say, hosting UCF on Thursday, the Sooners on Sunday, a couple of home matches there. UCF, definitely another tough test for this Cougar team. They third team out currently of the coaches poll, number 38 in the initial RPI. And they're also undefeated all time in Big 12 play after they scored a 4-2 winner over West Virginia in the conference opener. Notably, the Cougs obviously have a lot of history with the UCF. They had been actually winless in 16 tries against the Knights until the spring 2021 season and the fall 2021 season, which saw a pair of Cougar victories last year in Orlando. However, the Cougs got the upper hand, or the Knights, I should say, got the upper hand with a 1-0 victory. So, we'll see. I'm kind of, if I'm setting a line in this one, if I'm in Vegas, I probably favor the Knights by a goal, maybe a goal and a half. But, with this one in Houston, with the Cougs having played this team close in recent years and kind of knowing that they can play them close, I think about the possibility for the Cougs to get a result here. I would really love to see if they can finally get that offense going against a decent team.
Yeah, it kind of feels like the Washington game where you're like, okay, I could see us getting a result. Washington's better than just blanked on the name. Yeah, I think Washington's better than our opponent this weekend. So it's just going to be one of those things where can you get the goal? We haven't scored, like we said, against any of our any really good teams. So let's see. Let's put some points on the board versus UCF here.
Yeah, and then in the second game of this weekend, the Cougs will be hosting Oklahoma on Sunday, and then then this certainly is a game that the Cougars are much more in the probably should win column. Oklahoma dead last among Big 12 teams in the initial RPI of the season at 168. Have not been a really strong soccer team broadly speaking, and the trend seems to be continuing this year. The Cougs have actually faced the Sooners each of the past 2 seasons, beat them 3-1 2 years ago at home in Houston, and then last year we're up in Norman, a game that the Cougs were led 1-0 basically the entire way before giving up an equalizing goal and drawing 1-1 kind of at the last second there. So I think the UCF game is kind of this like, hey, potential to maybe raise my spirits and raise my confidence in what the soccer program can do. But then you also have Oklahoma, and that's more of like, oh, please, you've got probably the worst team of the conference at home. This is one you really got to win to have it, to even maybe, have that chance
Make
of
the tournament.
Making the Big 12 tournament. Yeah, for sure. And then finally, we're going to mention, just want to throw real quick on our way out, Cougar Cross Country competed at the Texas A&M Invitational, their second of 3 regular season events, and a couple of podium finishes. Miles Cox finished 3rd on the men's side, earning Big 12 Runner of the Week honors for his efforts. Also led the Cougs to a 2nd place team finish behind the host Aggies. Claire Meyer took 3rd on the women's side for the Cougs. So, I think 2 reasonably encouraging results for Houston and cross country this fall. Haven't seen anything, especially with the teams in the field and the events that Houston has competed in, that to make me think that Houston's fortunes have wildly changed in terms of the form of track and field that they'll probably always be worst at for the foreseeable future. But I think they've been at least more competitive than usual thus far, kind of similar to the soccer program, what we keep saying in non-conference. It's like, well, who have they played? But at least they look more competitive this year. So I think good to see with the new cross-country coach, and hopefully that will translate well to some impressive performances the rest of the year.
Yep.
So that's going to be it for us on our way out. Since we're 2 hours in now, we're going to cut this real short and just say patreon.com/SH podcast, charliehustle.com, promo code SHP12, 1012 network on all the social medias, shpodcast@gmail.com, Twitter @SH podcasts. And as always,
go Cougs.